Sarah had made a silent vow, never depend on anyone again. After 2 relationships that drained her love, her money, and her trust, she built a flawless life, solid career, controlled routine, heart locked tight. Until the day she walked into a boardroom, took her seat at the table, and realized someone was looking at her in a way she'd never experienced before. It wasn't desire. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't easy interest. It was as if he could see exactly who she was beneath all her defenses. And in that moment, Sarah understood that the real risk wasn't working with Ryan. It was feeling something she had sworn she'd never feel again. What that look truly meant, she would have to find out. Welcome to Lost Stories and Lyrics, the place where emotional stories will touch your heart. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The pen slipped through Sarah's fingers and clattered onto the table, the sharp sound echoing too loudly in the quiet office. She blinked, realizing she'd read the same paragraph of the contract 3 times without absorbing a single word. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and the 23rd floor was deserted, the low hum of the air conditioning the only thing filling the space. She should have been used to it by now, to that chosen solitude, that isolation she'd built brick by brick with her own hands. She stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Below, the city pulsed with life, lights flickering at different rhythms, cars forming glowing rivers along the avenues. Sarah watched it all like someone watching a foreign film without subtitles. She knew there was meaning there, human connections, stories intertwining, but none of it reached her anymore. She returned to her chair and stared at the stack of case files waiting for her attention. Wins. Every one of them represented a win. Satisfied clients, cases won, a reputation that grew stronger with every quarter. So why did that familiar weight press down on her chest at moments like this? Why did the emptiness feel bigger precisely when she should have been celebrating? 3 years. It had been 3 years since she drew the final line in her life. 3 years since she decided enough was enough, her heart would no longer be open territory. The decision hadn't come overnight. It came after Derek, who used her name and credibility to open doors that would have stayed shut without her, only to walk away the moment he landed the position he wanted. It came after she learned he'd shared intimate details of her life with coworkers, turning her vulnerability into happy hour gossip. And it came definitively after Brandon, 2 years later, when she thought she'd finally learned her lesson. Brandon seemed solid, a successful entrepreneur with the air of someone who didn't need anything he didn't already have. Sarah let herself relax. Let herself imagine a life that didn't revolve entirely around hearings and contracts. She even considered slowing down, taking fewer cases, making room for something beyond her career. Then the numbers stopped adding up. Small discrepancies at first, brushed off by Brandon with vague explanations about investments and opportunities. When Sarah finally dug in, because as a lawyer, she knew how to spot evasions, she discovered he'd used his access to her finances to cover the debts of a failing business. Worse than the money was how coldly he reacted when confronted. "You can make that back in a few months," he said, as if the problem were the amount, not the betrayal. It was in that moment, staring at the man who claimed to love her shrugging off what he'd done, that something crystallized inside her. A decision, cold, sharp, unbreakable. Never again. She filed the lawsuit, recovered what she could, and used every dollar to build a fortress. She bought a compact apartment that carried no memories of anyone else. Decorated it with clean lines and neutral colors. Eliminated from her routine any crack where vulnerability might slip in. She woke at 5, ran until her lungs burned, arrived at the office before the sun fully rose, worked until the city below turned once again into a sea of lights. Weekends were for studying precedents, refining strategies, sharpening weapons for the next legal battle. There was no improvisation, no surprises, no space for anything that couldn't be controlled, predicted, managed. Her colleagues respected her. Some whispered about her in the hallways, ice cold, she'd overheard once, but Sarah didn't care. Respect was enough. Professional admiration was all she needed. Friendship stayed superficial, held at a safe distance. Men were out of the question. She had a system that worked perfectly, a life that made sense by its own rules. Until that Monday. Sarah was called into the senior partner's office just after lunch. She walked into the spacious room with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. After all, she hadn't lost a case in 18 months. William sat behind his mahogany desk, wearing the serious expression he reserved for important matters. "We have a delicate situation," he began, gesturing for Sarah to sit. "A major corporate merger. 2 multinational companies, multiple jurisdictions, 9-figure numbers. The clients are nervous and demanded our top people." Sarah nodded, already reorganizing her schedule in her head to make room for the new case. "There's an added complication," William continued, something in his tone making her brace for bad news. "We'll be partnering with Davidson and Associates. They represent the other side of the merger, and both clients want close collaboration between the legal teams to keep things as smooth as possible." The discomfort was immediate. Sarah hated arrangements like that. It meant giving up control, negotiating every comma, dealing with different work styles, and inevitably, inflated egos. She preferred working alone or with her own team, where she had full command of strategy and execution. "I know it's not ideal," William said, as if reading the resistance on her face. "But the contract is signed. You'll lead our team. Their lead attorney is Ryan Mitchell. From what I've been told, his approach is very similar to yours, focused, discreet, results-driven. I think you'll work well together." The name was familiar. Sarah had heard Ryan Mitchell mentioned in hallway conversations, a formidable reputation in the legal world. Never lost, never showed up at social events, never gave interviews. People said he was married to his work just like she was. That offered a small measure of relief. Maybe working with someone equally dedicated wouldn't be the nightmare these collaborations usually were. The first meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Sarah prepared the way she always did, 3 nights studying every detail of the case, anticipating obstacles, developing backup strategies. Thursday morning, she chose her sharpest gray suit, pulled her hair into a sleek low ponytail, grabbed her leather briefcase, and left 45 minutes early. She arrived at Davidson's office with 15 minutes to spare. The receptionist led her to a modern conference room of glass and brushed steel. Sarah settled in, opened her laptop, and reviewed her notes one last time. She took a deep breath, adjusted her posture, raised the invisible defenses that always protected her in professional settings. She was ready. Then she heard footsteps in the hall, and the door opened. Ryan Mitchell walked in, and something in Sarah's universe shifted off its axis. He didn't match the image she'd built in her mind. She'd expected someone older, maybe with the slightly hunched posture of a man who'd spent decades bent over documents. Instead, the man before her looked her age, maybe a few years older. Tall, broad-shouldered beneath a perfectly tailored navy suit, dark brown hair with a few unruly strands falling onto his forehead, as if he had a habit of running his hands through it while thinking. There was a natural elegance to his movements, a calm that didn't need to announce itself. But it was when their eyes met that Sarah felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Ryan paused in the doorway, his gaze settling on her. It wasn't a look Sarah had learned to decode and block. It wasn't evaluative, searching for weaknesses or leverage. It wasn't predatory, heavy with inappropriate interest. It wasn't indifferent or overly professional. It was something she couldn't name. He simply saw her. His eyes, clear, deep brown, rested on her without hurry, without demand. They weren't trying to impress, or seduce, or measure her worth. They just observed, recognized, accepted. As if that look could see past the carefully polished armor she wore every day, not invading, not violating, simply acknowledging that there was a person there. And strangely, inexplicably, he didn't seem interested in dismantling her defenses. He just saw her, and that was enough. Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. Heat crept up her neck, coloring her cheeks. Her hands trembled over the keyboard, her hands, which never trembled, which signed multi-million-dollar contracts without hesitation, which didn't falter even in the most brutal courtrooms. Pure panic flooded her chest. She knew this feeling. Recognized the swirl of it. And she'd sworn, promised herself, that she would never allow it again. It was the vertigo of a fall she couldn't afford. Sarah Connors? His voice was low and steady, perfectly aligned with that disarming gaze. She forced her vocal cords to cooperate, hating how soft her voice sounded. Yes. You're Ryan Mitchell. He confirmed with a nod and walked to the table, extending his hand. Sarah stood automatically, and when their palms met, a jolt of electricity shot up her arm. The handshake was firm, warm, brief, entirely professional. But the sensation lingered on her skin even after he let go. I appreciate you working with us, Ryan said, taking the seat across from her and opening his folder. I read about the Hartman case. Your strategy was brilliant. She should have responded with something appropriate, but her mind was chaos, scrambling to regain the control she'd always had. She murmured a vague thank you and fixed her eyes on her laptop, pretending to review documents while her pulse raced. What was happening to her? Years of training, self-protection, walls built so carefully, and it took only seconds in this man's presence for cracks to form. The meeting began. Ryan laid out his analysis with impressive clarity, a methodical, precise approach Sarah recognized as similar to her own. She added her points, and to her surprise, and growing unease, they fell into sync almost immediately. There was no competition, no clashing egos. He listened to her ideas with genuine attention, asked questions that showed he was truly processing what she said, conceded when she was right, and offered solid counterarguments when he disagreed. It was exactly the kind of professional partnership Sarah had always wanted. And yet, every time their eyes met by accident during the discussion, she felt that impact again. That devastating calm. That way of seeing her that demanded nothing, yet offered something she hadn't known she was missing: recognition without judgment, presence without intrusion. When the meeting finally ended, Sarah gathered her documents with automatic movements, desperate to escape that room, that office, the orbit of this man who had managed, in less than 2 hours, to shake foundations she'd spent 3 years building. Same time next week? Ryan asked, packing his papers with the same meticulous order. Yes, Sarah managed, forcing herself to meet his gaze for a brief second. Same time. He smiled, a small, almost imperceptible lift at the corners of his mouth, but genuine. Great. I have a feeling we'll do good work together. Sarah nodded and left before he could say anything else. She walked down the hallway with controlled steps, stepped into the elevator, and as soon as the doors closed, leaned against the cool metal wall and shut her eyes. No. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not with him. Not with anyone. But as the elevator descended, Sarah knew, with a terrifying certainty that twisted her stomach, that something had changed. That calm look from Ryan Mitchell had found a crack in her armor. And the most frightening part was that a small, treacherous, impossible to silence part of her wanted to let that crack grow. Sarah spent the weekend trying to convince herself that it meant nothing. Just a random chemical reaction, a moment of weakness that wouldn't happen again. She filled every hour with work, reviewed contracts, studied precedents, prepared arguments for upcoming hearings. Yet even as her eyes moved across the pages, her mind kept drifting back to that calm gaze, to that handshake that still seemed to linger on her skin. At the second meeting, a week later, Sarah arrived determined. She wore her most formal suit, a severe black one that always made her feel armored. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun. She rehearsed a cold, strictly professional demeanor in her head. There would be no more slips. No more heat rising up her neck. No more trembling hands. Ryan was already in the room when she walked in. He stood as soon as he saw her, and Sarah forced herself to keep her eyes fixed on a spot just past his shoulder as they greeted each other. But when he extended his hand, she had no choice but to look at him, and it was like being hit by a wave all over again. That devastating calm. That way of seeing her that disarmed every defense she'd so carefully built. "How was your weekend?" Ryan asked, and there was something in his voice, a simple sincerity, without the automatic tone people usually used for polite questions. Sarah gave a generic answer about work and noticed, by the way he nodded, that Ryan had done exactly the same. There was a quiet recognition there, a shared understanding between two people who had chosen the solitude of work as refuge. The meetings became weekly, then twice a week as the case grew more complex. Sarah realized that working with Ryan was unlike any professional partnership she'd ever had. He didn't try to dominate conversations or impose his ideas. He listened with a kind of full attention that unsettled her. When he disagreed, it was with solid arguments, no wounded ego. When he agreed, he gave genuine credit to her ideas. And that look. Always that look. Sarah began to notice small details. The way Ryan ran a hand through his hair when he was focused. The faint line that formed between his brows when he read something complex. The way he spun his pen between his fingers while thinking. The slight curve of his lips when she said something that impressed him. She hated herself for noticing. Hated herself even more for the warmth that bloomed in her chest every time their eyes met by accident. It was during a particularly tense meeting, 3 weeks in, that everything started to unravel. They were debating a problematic clause in the contract. Both clients were being difficult, each pushing for terms that favored only their side. Sarah was explaining why a certain approach wouldn't hold up legally when she realized Ryan wasn't looking at the documents. He was looking at her. She stopped mid-sentence, heart racing. What? Ryan hesitated, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw uncertainty on his face. Sorry. It's just, you're impressive when you work. The way your mind connects things, how you anticipate problems before they happen. It's rare to see that. Heat rushed to Sarah's face. It wasn't an empty or patronizing compliment. It was an honest observation, almost vulnerable in its sincerity. And the way he looked at her while saying it, not with shallow admiration, but with something deeper, more dangerous. Thank you, she managed, quickly dropping her gaze back to the papers in front of her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. That night, alone in her apartment, Sarah stood on the balcony staring out at the city. The lights flickered the way they always did, life unfolding below the way it always had. But something inside her felt different. That familiar emptiness, the loneliness she'd embraced as armor, suddenly felt less like a choice and more like a prison. She thought of Derek, who had used her trust as a stepping stone. Thought of Brandon, who had seen her savings as a solution to his own mistakes. Thought of every reason she'd sworn she would never allow this again. But Ryan didn't seem like either of them. Ryan didn't ask for anything. He didn't intrude. He didn't try to tear down her defenses. He just existed. Saw her. And that was both the most terrifying and the most tempting thing of all. Sarah tightened her grip on the balcony railing. No. She couldn't do this to herself. She couldn't open that door again. At the next meeting, she tried to keep emotional distance. She answered in clipped phrases when Ryan asked anything that wasn't strictly professional. She avoided his gaze. She left the room the moment the meeting ended, skipping the extra minutes of casual conversation that had quietly become routine. Ryan noticed. She saw the confusion in his expression, the way he hesitated before speaking, as if trying to understand what had changed. But he didn't push. He didn't demand explanations. And somehow, that made everything worse. It was late on a Friday afternoon, while they were reviewing documents in one of the conference rooms, that everything finally imploded. Sarah was reading through a clause when she caught a serious issue, something the other side's lawyers had slipped in subtly, but that could cost her client millions. She pointed it out immediately, her voice sharper and more tense than she intended. Ryan leaned in to look at the document, standing closer than he usually did. Sarah felt the heat of his body, the faint scent of his cologne mixed with coffee. Her heart began to race, and suddenly everything was too much, the proximity, the scent, the acute awareness of every inch of space between them. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need air. She walked to the window, arms crossed, trying to regain control of her breathing. She heard Ryan stand behind her, but he didn't come closer. Sarah, he said, and there was something in his voice that made her stomach tighten. Did I do something wrong? She closed her eyes. She could lie. Say she was stressed about the case, that it wasn't personal. She could keep the walls intact. But when she turned and met that gaze, that damn calm, deep gaze that truly saw her, something inside her gave way. "You scare me," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "The way you look at me scares me." Ryan stayed still, simply listening. He didn't deny it or brush it off. He just waited for her to continue, and maybe that was exactly why she did. "I built this," Sarah gestured vaguely at herself, at the invisible armor she wore. "I built all of this to protect myself. To never be that vulnerable, stupid person again, the one who trusts and loses everything. And then you show up and look at me like that, and suddenly it's all cracking, and I can't let that happen. I can't." Her voice broke on the last words, and she hated herself for the weakness, for the tears threatening to rise. Ryan took a slow breath. When he spoke, his voice was low, careful. "I don't want to break anything, Sarah. I don't want to take anything from you. When I look at you, I see someone who's as tired of carrying everything alone as I am." Something split open in her chest. "You don't know me." "No," he agreed. "But I recognize someone trying to survive when I see one. I recognize someone who turned loneliness into a fortress because it felt safer than risking again." He took a single step toward her, then stopped. "I understand why you're afraid. I'm afraid too. But pretending there's nothing happening here won't make it disappear. It'll only make it hurt more." Sarah looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, she saw something she hadn't before. Ryan carried his own walls, his own scars. He wasn't the ruthless man people described. He was someone who had chosen the same solitude she had, for the same reasons. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to let someone get close without losing everything again." Ryan took another step, then another, until he was close enough for her to see the golden flecks in his brown eyes. "I'm not asking for everything. I'm asking for a chance. One conversation outside these offices. A coffee. Just a possibility." Sarah felt her defenses shaking, cracking. Every ounce of logic screamed at her to pull back, to cling to the safety of distance. But something else was stronger, a deep, terrifying longing not to be so alone, to let someone see her without armor, to risk it even knowing she could be hurt again. "A coffee," she repeated, her voice barely audible. Ryan smiled, small but genuine, filled with something that looked a lot like hope. A coffee. That night, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling of her bedroom. She had crossed a line. She had admitted something she'd tried to deny for weeks. She had agreed to something that broke every rule she'd set for herself. And the most terrifying part was that, for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel completely empty. There was something new there, fear, yes, but also a flicker of something that felt dangerously like hope. The coffee date was set for the following Saturday. Sarah changed outfits 4 times before leaving the apartment, annoyed at herself for caring so much. She finally settled on dark jeans and a white linen blouse, casual, but not careless. Simple, but intentional. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. There was nervousness in her eyes, but also something she hadn't seen in years, anticipation. Ryan was already at the cafe when she arrived, sitting near the window with 2 cups of coffee on the table. He stood when he saw her, and Sarah noticed how different he looked outside the formal office setting, a gray sweater over a white shirt, jeans, hair slightly messy. More human. More approachable. "I ordered black coffee," he said, pointing to one of the cups. "But I wasn't sure if that's what you like, so I can switch it if..." "It's perfect," Sarah interrupted as she sat down. And it was. He had paid attention to a small detail she hadn't even realized she'd revealed during their meetings. The first few minutes were awkward. Small talk about the weather, the cafe, anything that avoided the invisible elephant between them, the fact that they were both there, vulnerable in a way neither of them allowed anywhere else. Ryan was the one who broke the tension. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded, hands wrapped tightly around the warm cup. "Why law? What made you choose this path?" It was a simple question, but the answer wasn't. Sarah hesitated, then, for the first time in years, allowed herself to be honest. She talked about growing up in a family with no power, where important decisions were made by other people and they simply had to accept them. She talked about deciding she would never be powerless like that, that she would learn the rules, master the system, become someone who couldn't be ignored. "And you?" she asked when she finished. "Why do you hide inside your work?" Ryan smiled, but it was a sad smile. He told her about a marriage that ended years earlier, about a woman who said he was great at building arguments but terrible at building intimacy. About how he threw himself into work because it was easier than facing loneliness, until loneliness became his only companion. "I realized I was using work the same way you use your walls," he said, staring into his coffee. "As protection. As an excuse not to risk again." Something shifted in Sarah's chest. "And now? What changed?" Ryan lifted his eyes, and there it was again, that look that saw her completely. You changed something." The coffee turned into a walk through the nearby park. They talked about everything and nothing, books they loved, movies that made them cry, dreams they had before deciding that dreaming was too dangerous. And Sarah realized something surprising: she was laughing. Really laughing. Lightly, genuinely, in a way she'd forgotten was possible. When Ryan walked her to the door of her building, there was a moment of hesitation. He didn't try to kiss her, didn't make any move that might scare her. He simply held her hand for a moment, his thumb tracing a gentle circle on her palm. "Can we do this again?" he asked. Sarah should have said no. She should have pulled back, reclaimed control, retreated to the safety of her walls. But she looked at the man who somehow managed to see through all her defenses without trying to tear them down, and found herself saying, yes. In the days that followed, something changed. Sarah kept working just as hard, kept winning her cases, but there was a new lightness in her step. She caught herself smiling for no reason while reviewing contracts. She replied to Ryan's messages between meetings, simple conversations about their days that made her heart race in a way that was no longer just fear. They started seeing each other regularly. Dinners after long meetings. Walks on weekends. Conversations that stretched late into the night, where Sarah surprised herself by revealing parts of her she'd kept hidden for years. Ryan never pushed. Never asked for more than she was ready to give. When Sarah felt the walls starting to rise again, when fear tried to convince her this would end in disaster like everything else, he simply waited. Gave her space. And then, when she was ready, he was there, with that calm look that said, "I see you, and it's okay." It was on a rainy night, 3 months after that first coffee, that Sarah realized the truth. They were at her apartment, a boundary she had finally lowered, letting him into her personal space. Ryan was in the kitchen making tea while she finished reviewing a document on the couch. The scene was so domestic, so normal, so different from anything Sarah had known. And suddenly she understood, she wasn't falling. She had already fallen. Panic came first, that familiar feeling of losing control. But when Ryan returned with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside her, when he simply existed there without demanding anything, without taking anything, just sharing the space with her, Sarah realized something fundamental. Loving Ryan didn't mean losing herself. It meant finding someone who saw her, really saw her, and still respected who she was. Someone who didn't want to shape her, use her, or fix her. Someone who simply wanted to be beside her while they both learned how not to be so alone. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He turned to her, attentive, fully present. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "I'm terrified this will destroy me again." Ryan set his mug aside and took her hand. "I'm scared too. Honestly, terrified. But you know what scares me more? Letting fear make me lose this. Lose you." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm not enough, or you're not, or... Sarah, he interrupted gently, his thumb brushing the back of her hand. There are no guarantees. I can't promise we'll never hurt each other or never mess up. But I can promise I'll try. Every day, I'll try to see you, to hear you, to respect you. And when it gets hard, because it will, I'll try not to run. I'll try to stay. Something broke open inside Sarah. Not in a destructive way, but like a dam finally giving way, letting years of trapped emotion flow free. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't try to stop them. Ryan pulled her into his arms, and Sarah let herself melt there, allowed herself to be vulnerable in a way she'd sworn she never would again. And she realized vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was courage. It was choosing to risk even knowing you could get hurt, because the alternative, that safe and empty loneliness, was a slow kind of death. I want to try, she whispered against his chest. I'm terrified, but I want to try. She felt Ryan kiss the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. Then let's try together. That night, Sarah didn't sleep in her usual bed, cold and solitary. She slept on the couch, curled against Ryan, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart as rain tapped against the windows. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt safe. Not because there were guarantees, not because she was protected from all possible pain, but because she had chosen to trust. She had chosen to believe it was possible to be fully seen and still be loved. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were moments when Sarah's old fears resurfaced, when she caught herself searching for signs of betrayal, of being used, of imminent abandonment. There were nights when she almost ran, almost rebuilt the walls and locked Ryan out. But every time, Ryan was there. Patient. Present. Seeing her through the panic, waiting for the storm to pass, then gently reminding her that he wasn't Derek. He wasn't Brandon. He was just Ryan, a man as scared and imperfect as she was, trying to build something real in the middle of their emotional wreckage. And every time, Sarah chose to stay. She chose to breathe, to lower her defenses just a little more, to trust 1 inch further. And each time she did, she discovered she didn't collapse. She didn't disappear. She simply found herself a little more. A year after that first look that completely unraveled her, Sarah was in her office when she got a message from Ryan. Dinner tonight? I want to show you something. She smiled, the kind of smile that now came naturally, without effort. Of course. They met at the same cafe where they'd had their first date. Ryan looked nervous, she noticed, his fingers tapping lightly on the table the way they did when he was anxious. Sarah took his hand, a gesture that had become second nature between them. What is it? She asked. Ryan took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us, about how we got here, about what this means. He paused. Sarah, you saved me. Not in a dramatic, romantic way, but in a real one. You saved me from a loneliness I was sure was all I deserved. You showed me it's possible to build something true even when you're broken. Sarah felt her heart race, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something else entirely. I don't want to promise perfection, Ryan continued. I don't want to say we'll never fight or that it'll always be easy. But I want to promise I'll keep trying. That I'll keep seeing you, hearing you, choosing you every day. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Sarah Connors, would you let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the love you were brave enough to give me? Sarah looked at him, at the man who saw through all her armor and chose to love her anyway, who had patience with her fears, who taught her that vulnerability was strength, not weakness. And she realized the woman she'd been 3 years earlier, so convinced that loneliness was safety, had been wrong. Safety wasn't in walls. It was in choosing someone every day and being chosen back. It was in risking, in falling, in trusting that someone would be there to hold your hand on the way down. Yes, she said, her voice steady, certain, without a trace of hesitation. Yes. When Ryan slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her right there in the middle of the cafe, Sarah understood something essential. She hadn't lost anything by opening her heart. She had gained everything. She had gained a partnership built on mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and daily choices to stay. Sarah's victory wasn't finding perfect love or a fairy tale ending without complications. It was learning she was strong enough to be vulnerable. It was discovering that letting someone in didn't mean losing herself. It meant finally allowing someone to know who she truly was beneath all that armor. It was realizing that the greatest risk wasn't loving again, but slowly dying inside a self-imposed solitude, too afraid to live. And as they walked out of the cafe hand in hand, the ring catching the light on Sarah's finger and genuine smiles on both their faces, she knew she'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, but the brave one. The choice to believe that sometimes, the right person sees all your walls and, instead of trying to tear them down, simply waits until you're ready to open the gate. Enjoyed the video? Smash that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories. I'll be waiting for you in the next story.